Hi, it's Stephen DiPietro from servicewithpurpose.net. Today I want to talk about why less is more and a lesson we can learn from Apple's launch of the iPad. Now, the temptation for a lot of product designers is to cram as much stuff as they can into a product. In fact, a lot of us have got the same problem. We try to cram as much into our product presentations. These are the lists of all the things we can do. When you buy a car, you open the big trifold, 1,000-fold brochure, and it's got a list of all the ticks and crosses of what each product has got. It's completely overwhelming. In a market research situation, I find it in the mystery shopping company. We have companies that when they do mystery shopping, they say, well, we want to include everything we can into this mystery shopping program. They try to cram in absolutely as much as possible. And that confuses things. They lose the message. So what we can learn from Apple is that, and we can learn this from Jonathan Ive, the chief designer at Apple. He's the guy behind designing the iPad and the iPhone and iPods. And in the interview, he said, and I'm going to read off my screen here in exact words, he was interviewed by Stephen Fry, a well-known author, prior to the launch of the iPad. And Stephen Fry was questioning him about the lack of a USB port, about the lack of a camera, and those types of things. And Stephen Ive's response was interesting, and it wasn't what you'd normally expect. He said, quote unquote, in many ways, it's the things that are not there that we are the most proud of. Now that's an interesting quote, because normally people would defend their position and say, well, we didn't put those things there for whatever reason. So it's interesting that he's taken that approach to say, we're actually proud of what we left out. It's a very clear and focused strategy. In fact, further in the interview, Stephen Fry also interviews Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs says that Apple is actually at the intersection of liberal arts and technology. Now that's really interesting because he doesn't talk about money, and he says that money will follow. Now, by the way, you can follow this, if you look on the blog, you can see the link to the original transcript of the interview in Time magazine. So what we can learn from Apple is this focus, and taking things out actually gives you more. And I think we can learn a lot in our businesses about that. When you're giving the prospect less, you're actually giving them more, because by giving them less, you're forced to focus in on the things that are really important to them, as opposed to just going, well, here's a bunch of stuff and I hope that one of them is of interest to you if you're paying attention, which obviously they're not in most cases. It takes courage to stand up to that, or stand against the tide that we're being taught of jamming everything in, and to take a stand. If you're cramming your products and prospects with stuff, you can't be focusing on what those people need. So have a think about the iPad and think about what you can take out of your product offerings, because after all, less is more. Again, it's Stephen DiPietro from servicewithpurpose.net. Have an awesome day.